The cable guy said that was funny right there.
That's funny right there. I don't care who you are.
Wants to take me down to New Guinea or something. Is that what he says to him?
I don't know. That sounds like something you say. Sorry about the nausea-inducing camera movement. Give me a second. This is it's tilting.
It's good. That's great.
Look at this. It's gonna make you look even shorter than you are not. I stopped. All right.
Would you like me to fix it, Michael?
It's not even worth the effort at this point. And now I can't get my screen to scroll up and down because of the.
Those are tolling that.
Oh, all right. What are you doing? It's not worth it. It's not a battle. It's worth not a hill worth dying on. Not a battle worth fighting.
Well, I'm not going to die on them.
Oh, look what you're doing. Cool.
As I'm getting
Making it worse.
my ear cleaned out by the dog.
Oh,
Like a wet willy from the dog.
I like you, Murph. Yes, I do. We have a guest here. Yes. We're a very cool church. Okay, we make the
You know how
rules.
many poor people we could feed with you?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Kevin's officially a monster.
She doesn't like
All right.
you anymore after
We have
that
to pray
comment.
for people in Shanghai. Oh, isn't it awful?
What's going on in Shanghai? The
They
Uyghur.
locked everybody in.
Oh yeah, the lockdowns. Yes, yes. I watched the video. Yeah, people were yelling from their windows.
Screaming out.
Wanted water.
And this is coming from a self-professed Christian activist or pacifist, excuse me, activist, I suppose. Self-professed Christian pacifist. This is what happens when you take the guns out of the arms of the citizens.
Yeah.
That is why we have the right to bear arms, because the government doesn't force citizens to stay in their homes if they think that they're going to run into armed opposition.
What it's really about is that people in Shanghai were starting to be independent.
Yeah. And I think a lot of this stuff with Taiwan and it's all coming to it's making people think. All right.
They're using the excuse of COVID.
Yeah.
But without symptoms.
It's really sad.
Asymptomatic.
Well, it's a slippery slope.
Totalitarianism.
I've divided this into 6 sections. This is in the trusty old King James. But what's really cool is if there is a chapter you're gonna not mind reading in the King James, it's gonna be like the Psalms and Proverbs. They're meant to be read with a lot of wisdom. If you make them sound too every day, it might be a little. In other words, it's good sometimes to be forced to slow down and think about what we're reading. So I think there's some real advantages to having to really sometimes trip over some things. Not to say it's the only way to read it, but I have a really sincere appreciation for some of the ways these proverbs are worded. Yes, Susan.
I think that busyness is a satanic strategy to pull people away from God.
Sure.
Because we need alone time.
I agree with you. Yeah, I do agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I actually mentioned something like that very recently about Western civilization as a whole. We just kept so busy with work or something we're working for, grinding, or entertainment, or something. There's always something on the plate. And that's why I really do strive to keep my Saturdays as empty as I can, so I can force myself to have that window, because I won't if I don't. I'll fill it up with things to do. Alrighty. You'll notice out of the 6 paragraphs here, one of them is divided into bullet points because of some parallelism. Let thy, let them, let thy, let her. The 4th one is italicized, but it's still parallel with the others. There are commands that have to do with drinking waters out of your own cistern. Proverbs 5 is essentially could be categorized as the warning regarding the woman of adulteries. But I think there's some deeper wisdom here that would apply not just to a woman of adultery. We got to be careful. So I'll read paragraph 1, and then we'll go for it. My son, attend unto my wisdom, and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a 2-edged sword.
feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth.
Remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy ears unto the cruel. The strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of the stranger. And thou mourn at the last, and thy flesh and thy body are consumed.
And say, how have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof, and have not obeyed the voice of my teachers, nor inclined mine ear to them that instructed me. I was almost in all evil in the midst of the congregation and assembly. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well.
Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own, and not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind and the pleasant roe. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love.
And why wilt thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? For thy ways of man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he pondereth all his goings. His own iniquities shall take the wicked himself, and he shall be holden with the cords of his sins, and he shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray.
Sounds pretty judgmental. You know, he's going to die without instruction and his folly will go astray. Well, you never know. Remember, these are Proverbs. These are
Yes.
dire warnings. These are predictions, prophecies almost. They're saying, if this, then that. That's what they're saying. Any thoughts on Proverbs 5? I know I'll preface with this. I do want to say this. I did want to say this, and I'm going to say it. I remember one time my dad, he passed away. We came back to the States, and my mom at this time, she was still, she was newly remarried, right? So she's still kind of in single mom mode. So she's trying to read the Bible to us every night. And she came across, yeah, you're right, Murph. And she came across this Proverbs 5. It was the 5th day of the month, I'm sure. And she's reading it to us. And she turned bright red when she got to, let her be as the loving hind and pleasant roe, let her breast satisfy thee at all time. And she just is red as you can. And she's so sweet and cute, my mom. Right, exactly right. The two of us, Tim was somewhere, the two of us boys were there. And she was awesome, but I'll never forget how bright red, and she tried to conceal her shame. And I think that's beautiful about her, actually, is that there was a lot of shame, and so I say, well, why does it have to be so blunt, right? Why does the proverb have to be so direct and just talk about body parts and drinking waters out of your own cistern? Well, it's because if the Bible doesn't address it, the world's going to for you, right? The Bible addresses these things, and a lot of times without as much decor as we would typically do, because it's being real. And if it weren't for a lot of the real ways the Bible does describe sex, sexual temptation, sexual purity, we would be a little bit, we'd be flapping in the wind. You know what I mean? Like wondering.
Yeah.
But thanks to the Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, right? We know what intimate. I don't think it's a picture of Christ in the church. Are you a Christ church guy? I know I just put you in a pickle by saying I don't think it is, but
A lot of symbolism there.
you think so? Sorry, you're totally. I'm so glad we found something new that we don't quite see eye to eye. I was really excited about that, honestly. So it's okay to not see this the same way I do. I grew up thinking Song of Solomon is like all about Jesus. I do think you can draw symbolism from it. I think there's a lot there, really, because if we are the bride of Christ, then there is some there. But we have to admit that it stops at a certain point because there's some,
PG-13.
I was going to say PG-13.
Graphic.
There's some PG-13, right?
Graphic stuff.
Right. Thankfully, the Bible is never vulgar, and it never cheapens sexual relationship by going 50 Shades of Solomon, right? But it does discuss it in a very bold, really.
Unapologetic.
Yeah, and it was a rabbi who said that it was the rabbinic saying. It was the way that the Jews grew up with this book, they said, oh, what was it? Yes, children were not allowed to read the Song of Solomon until past their bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah. Matthew Henry said, lest the, and I think he was quoting a rabbinic tradition. Yes, he was. Lest the flames of lust be kindled by fires from heaven. That's what, and I love the way he said that, right? Lest the flames of lust be kindled by fire from heaven. So that these kids would read it, be titillated and excited about things that are too heavy for them to bear now, right? But they will be able to bear it later. So when we read the proverb, we're reading here and in a couple of other chapters here to come, some pretty explicit, if you will use the term, descriptions of what sexual purity and sexual failure looks like. So with that all being said, kids are downstairs. We can have an open conversation. Not that I'm necessarily encouraging that for the sake of it, but there's no off limits here. Maybe this is why our wife sat this one out.
There's the internet.
There is the interwebs.
Yes.
And I don't mean for anything to be said that we wouldn't want on the interwebs. But I'm just saying, parents, if your children are listening and you want them to watch an episode of Bible Project or VeggieTales if you're worldly. I'm just joking. I like that. No, you can't watch VeggieTales. No, I love VeggieTales too. If you, I know we just, all right, this is wrong. All right, if Adam were here, he'd be singing the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh well, sorry. I'll sober up.
So, anyways, Laura and Scott are here. Micah says, "Hey."
Yeah, she texted me, says she saw me.
Is that so she's the one who wanted you to sober up?
No, I'm just.
Oh, okay.
It's time to be an adult.
Understood. Is that like a hey, or is it like a hey, or hey? What kind of hey
It's
do you
more
think
like
that is?
hey.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
a Jalen style hey.
Hey.
A Josh style hey.
No more J. Hey.
More J. Hey.
In the book of Proverbs,
I know.
Come on, Susan.
You're the
Thank
best.
Okay, let's be an adult.
Well, I'm waiting for folks. No, I'm not. Now I am. If you have any thoughts about Proverbs 5,
uh,
I would love to hear them.
the let thy fountains and the let them be only. How are they not opposite each other?
That's a good question. Let your fountains be dispersed abroad and rivers of waters in the streets. Let them be only thine own and not strangers with thee. Let thy fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Now this says, drink waters from your own cistern and running waters out of your own well. So that, and I'm stating that one up front, and I'm going to get to your question. The whole waters of your own cistern and running waters out of your own well has to do with sexual purity and commitment to one person. Drink waters from thine own cistern. Somebody says, "Hey, I'm tempted to cheat on my wife." The proper response is, drink water from your own cistern. I'll put it this way. A little kid walks into a nursery, and there's 8 sippy cups. 8 sippy cups. You know, I really need Murphy to just teach, because he, no. So a little kid walks into a nursery, and there's 8 sippy cups. Each sippy cup has the label, and this little kid's name is
Billy.
Caden. Oh, okay, Billy, that's fine. Billy. And Billy's sippy cup has his name on it, and there's 8 sippy cups. Problem is, 2 people in this room are sick, but no one knows it yet. If Billy drinks from all other sippy cups, Billy is likely to get sick. The safe way is to drink from your own sippy cup. That's the best way I ever heard drink water from your own cistern taught in college. Was the guy, and he preached a message called drink water from your own sippy cup. It's yours. Drink it from your sippy cup. That is how the author of this proverb is helping people understand what sexual faithfulness means. Drink water from your own cistern. Now, with that in mind, Susan brings up this observation and a question. Let your fountains be dispersed abroad and rivers of water in the streets. Okay. But then he says, let them be only your own and not strangers with thee. Okay, so we know the context is sexual covenant faithfulness. All right. So the second bullet point, let them be only thine own and not strangers with thee. He's talking at least about something shared between 2 people, because strangers don't share this with you. It's shared between a certain covenant commitment. let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with who? Who is this other person who's sharing this fountain with you? The wife of your youth. Now, if I'm reading this at face value, and I know how euphemistic not only the King James is, but before that, how euphemistic the Hebrew language is, this could very well be talking about, and again, I don't know how else to say it other than, you're drinking waters from your own cistern, running waters of your own well, and then he jumps into this discourse of letting your fountain be dispersed abroad. I can't imagine that refers to anything outside of fertility and sexual abundance in this context. I'm of that persuasion just based on an at-a-glance reading, because these fountains are euphemistic for something, right? Or a symbol for something. It's something to be enjoyed not with strangers. It's something to be enjoyed with your wife of your youth. So what is it? It's sexual abundance. These fountains are being dispersed abroad and rivers of waters in the street, but they're only your own. He's talking about fertile abundance and yet reserved between two people. That's, again, from what I can, and it does have a I don't know how deep we want to go into the euphemism, but,
Is it 1 Corinthians 7 that talks about, I think that's where it talks about the husband should not withhold from his wife, and the wife should not withhold from her husband.
1 Corinthians 7 is about sexual ethic. Nevertheless, concerning the things whereof you wrote unto me, it is good for man not to have tomai, it's Greek, touch a woman. Nevertheless, this is the Michael Britt translation. For the sake of sexual faithfulness, it's good for everybody to marry. And then he goes on to give intramarital instruction.
It says that the husband should not withhold from his wife.
Yeah, not to defraud each other. Yeah, yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Could it be almost as if a public announcement or declaration that she's mine, I'm hers, everybody knows it?
Yeah, it could be, right?
Could that be the picture that
Yep.
Solomon might be painting?
Yep. Let your fountains be dispersed
I don't know,
abroad.
I'm just thinking.
And this is part of the reason why it's like, man, Britt, like I feel like I come to these things ready, but then I always miss like the study on the one thing that's gonna, be
Come on,
asked about.
Susan.
No, I'm so excited. I'm so glad because it just makes it that much more exciting for me.
Pearl has a thought.
Please.
When I first read it, tonight, of course, I've read it before, but my first thought was, let thy fountains be dispersed abroad. I was thinking of children, having a quiver full of children, and let them be only thine own and not strangers with thee. So if you're, being faithful to just one person,
Mm-hmm.
then you would, I'm not.
No, I got you. I got you.
Not, like picking on people that have kids with different people, but it just,
No, I get it.
that's my thought.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong. I don't know.
So before we jump in anymore, I do feel a certain obligation. You might be seeing the same thing. No, you're not. I'm consulting other textual traditions.
Okay.
So literally 30-second crash course. I'm not going to go into this because I don't want to die today. There are two manuscript traditions that lead to different translations of the English Bible. There's what's commonly referred to as the Byzantine or Masoretic text translation that was preserved in the Byzantine or Asia Minor region, which led to the King James translation, and sometimes the NKJV, Geneva, etc. Later on, other translational traditions were discovered. Other texts, some older, some more reliable, etc., some more numerous, were discovered, and that's called the critical text or the Nestle Aland, and that has been used to give birth to a lot of the more modern translation. Now, all that being said, the different family of text renders it as a rhetorical question. So in our King James, it says, let your fountains be dispersed abroad and river the water in the street. Susan, you're very astute to notice, of course, that these seem contradictory. It appears that other translational traditions phrase it in the following way.
Yeah, the Hebrew doesn't match up with this.
Yeah, it doesn't match up with King James, right? Yeah. Don't kill us, please. We're just trying to be faithful, right?
It doesn't.
So for instance, the ESV. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? Let them be for yourselves alone. Here's this one, the Lexham English Bible. Shall your springs be scattered outward? In the streets shall there be streams of water? May they be yours alone. Even the ASV, which many would argue come from a very reliable textual tradition, says, should your springs be dispersed abroad in streams of water in the streets? It's asking a rhetorical question saying, drink waters out of your own cistern, running waters from your own well. Let them be for yourself and not for strangers. Let it be a fountain that's blessed. Should it be dispersed abroad in streams of water in the streets? In other words, is your cistern for other people to drink out of? And that's the question that it seems to be asking. Now, someone might say, well, I'll stick with my King James. That's fine, but please understand that 400 years of thinking about this text have elapsed to a way where you don't have to change the King James, you just have to change the punctuation mark. And as you mentioned, and I'm sure you could back this up with your brief study, that the Hebrew seems to indicate a more rhetorical device. So, and it makes a lot more sense. I'm just going to dig a hole and say it, that when he says, drink waters from your own cistern and running waters out of your own well, it does not make sense to therefore say, let everybody have a drink. The proverb is trying to say, should everyone be drinking from this well? And again, it's a picture of fertility. This well springing forth that's preserved between two people is a picture of fertility. And to be very transparent with you, when you think of a fountain, right, you have a springing forth of life, an ejaculatory motion. All right, are we making sense here? I'm not being graphic. And so that is what is being said. Are you going to allow this to be partaken of by everyone, or is it just to be between two people? So obviously, I prefer the more critical reading here. What about you, Rev? I know we're on candid camera, but
That just doesn't make sense. The Hebrew words do not make sense. I'm confused.
with the KJV reading,
Even with the translations you read from.
yeah. So it could just be everybody's trying to take their best guess of what this is saying. What do you got?
What is
The fountains of a man or his children, bearing his name, to one of the rivers, particular fountain, it is singular wife, let thy fountain, and then they say fountains, a fertile wife, like a gushing fountain and fruitful vine. Could be. Again, I think I think, and I'm not saying that's wrong. It's the way you have to look at it if you want that text to make sense and not contradict the one verse before and two verses after.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Hebrew.
If you just make that first statement in that list a question,
That's exactly right. That was my point earlier. All you have to do is just change the punctuation to a question mark, because I hate to break it to you, the Hebrew doesn't have question marks and periods. Does that make sense? Hebrew doesn't use punctuations. In fact, they don't even use vowels. You have to have masora in order to create vowels.
This almost says like your fountain or your source be broken and severed.
Yeah.
According to the Hebrew.
So it's saying, drink waters out of your own cistern and running waters out of your own well. Should they be broken? Should they be disseminated around? And again, no pun intended, right? Should they be disseminated to everyone? Let them be only thine own and not strangers. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice with the wife of your youth. So at the very least, right? We're certainly not going to unravel the entire conundrum. Looks like we started a chain of hays, by the way. Mike or Cody, Kevin, Mike. It's a hey with star eyes on the emoji. But
Hey.
And then here's the interesting thing, right? Drink waters. Oh, okay. All right. So listen to this, guys and ladies. Who is this written to? Proverbs 5:1. A man, my son. Right? He's cautioning the man to allow his fountain to be his and his wife. The well from which he drinks, right? Drink from your own well. And then in verse 19, instead of saying, let your fountain be blessed, he says, let her be as the loving, high, and pleasant roe. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times. Be ravished always with her love. So and I'm not trying to read too much into it, but you can see a shared mutual covenant responsibility between a man and his wife. Is he saves everything for her. No one else drinks at the fountain of his love and sexuality. She allows herself to be drank from, partaken from by one man. And what is, let her breast satisfy thee at all times. All right. let her be at the loving hind and pleasant row. And of course,
I get it now.
loving hind and pleasant row, what book does that remind you of? Song of Solomon, right? This is very Solomonic, if you will. So no, it's an awesome question, and I think it kind of points toward making sure we're reading the text in a way that it was meant to be understood. That's a huge
I
point.
do understand. I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
I'm still
No.
working on my thought, but when you mentioned breaking or breakage, I was wondering if it means because you're breaking a relationship, it says fountains. All the other relationships you might have had before, they're broken. They're flowing to someone else. They're not stick to your own. All that goes somewhere else. You don't go to someone else's as well. So I wonder if that breakage means break the old fountains that you're not connected to anymore.
According to what I'm kind of trying to figure out from the Hebrew, it's literally keeping it extremely G-rated, literally a breaking of a wall of stopping the fountains and the rivers. There's literally a break there. In other words, there's stopping.
Yeah.
Dig into the Hebrew and you see what I mean there.
Yeah, let your fountain be
Don't do that today.
dispersed.
That'll mess your brain up.
The Hebrew word is puts.
Yes.
Puts.
But yeah, basically it's just
I'm 5
meaning
years old.
your source, it stops. It's broken. There's a wall between you and the rest of humanity because you need to stick with your wife, basically. He's painting a picture of literally there's a break. When you say I do, that's it. You made a break.
Puts, Peleg, Maim, Rekob. Let your fountain be puts. No joke.
Yes.
Dispersed abroad, Hebrew.
Yes.
Puts, coots.
Yes. Did
That's
you see
so cool.
Did you see what the word water stands for?
This breakage, there's no.
Maim. Oh.
Yeah. Okay. There we go.
Oh.
G-rated. Keep it G.
Yep.
So basically, you're stopping the
Yes.
fountains by
Yes.
building a really big wall.
Huh.
Basically, that's the picture that he's trying to paint.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
How do you keep that G-rated?
You just don't talk about it on the internet.
Not on the internet, but
Basically, that's it.
it has to do with having
Procreation.
Yes, procreation. Being a pro at procreation.
Yes.
All right. Hey, so there, yeah, okay, that's pretty interesting. So the Hebrew basically turns waters, it's a euphemism, right? For the male bodily fluid, right? And it has to do with being fertile and being abundant with that. So my intuition appears to have been correct. I'm just going to take this moment to pat my dog. Just joking. All right. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And the follow-up, bro. All right. Who else has questions, observations? This is a very full chapter. It's full of warnings and things like that. Kim.
I liked when Pearl was reading what the end is for those who don't follow the path of wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't remember the wording. It's very frustrating.
His own iniquity shall take the wicked himself. He shall be holden with the cords of his sins. He shall die without instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he shall go astray. Again, not real.
You see a lot of that.
Right. And again, this guy's writing this to his son. He's trying to be as strong as he possibly can and say, listen to me. I'm trying to help you live. Look at the blue paragraph, that third one. He's talking about remove your way far from her. Her feet go down to death, that sort of thing. And then he says this, lest you give your honor to others, lest you give your years to the cruel, lest strangers be filled with your wealth, and your labors be in the house of the stranger. Like it's all about giving things away. So the person who is sexually unfaithful thinks they're getting something, but in the end, they're actually losing everything. And I'm not just talking about going into somebody's house and actually cheating on somebody with your spouse. I'm talking about any sort of sexual unfaithfulness. Today, I clicked on an article because I'm a sucker for clickbait, and it said 3 things that every married couple should ask each other by a marriage counselor. One of them was, what are your expectations as far as time, sexual relationship? Good question. The other was another good question. But the first question to ask is, how do you define monogamy? And that comes days after I just read an article in one of those modern magazines about how this woman decided that she was going to have a sexually open relationship. Her husband said, yeah, I don't want to know the details, but yeah, And then a little while later, he wants to know details. It's his wife. You know what I mean? He's like, and then he doesn't want her to do this. And she's like, this is so unfair. Should I leave him? And the person, the columnist, is now saying, oh, he's being super unrealistic. Unrealistic? You literally made a pledge to each other at the altar, right? So the first question was, define monogamy. Here's what the article said. Your husband, you and your significant other may have differing definitions of what monogamy is. To one spouse, it might be acceptable to flirt. To the other, it might not be. To one spouse, it might be acceptable to look at pornography. To the other, it might not be. So you need to discuss with each other what monogamy is to you. No, it's not about what monogamy is to you. What does monogamy mean? There is truth, and the world is trying to make you think that there is no such thing as truth, and that even words like monogamy, which are rather self-evident,
I just thought of that.
right? Which are rather self-evident. These were we've been having a talk about what does self-evident mean? Is it even a thing? There are some self-evident things. When you look at a stop sign, you can say that's red with white letters. That is self-evident. Nobody has to prove that to you. The word monogamy is a self-evident word. No one should have to define what monogamy is, right?
Yeah.
One person, one life, and well, I guess monogamy does need a definition. But monogamy. I should say this: monogamy, when properly understood, needs no elaboration.
Right.
Needs no elaboration. So you have.
Been living it, right?
So you have polygamy, poly, many, right? Monogamy, mono, one. So what do you bring that up for, Britt? Oh, I'm leaving in a second, so I'm just going to mention it. When you go into another woman, or ma'am, when you go into another man, or when, sir, you look at pornography, you flirt with the girl at the bar, you flirt with the customer, whatever, you entertain it for more than a second, you're getting some attention that you like. Come on, we've all, ladies, as I've learned from my wife, it is a different arena for ladies. It is a different arena. No one wants to look at my hairy legs. Okay, that's just the fact, right? It's completely different. Okay, but for ladies, as I understand it, it would be attention. The ones who listen, novels and books are much more titillating for ladies than they are for men, particularly because they tell stories and create an alternate reality that person can escape to. There's a lot of reasons, but for whatever, in whatever capacity one might find oneself being unfaithful to one's spouse, if one is honest with oneself, this remains true, unequivocally so. When you are unfaithful, you are giving your honor away, your years away, your wealth away, and your labors away. And then when your flesh and your body are consumed, you're going to mourn because it's not everything you ever dreamed of. Everything you ever dreamed of, it's not. And look at what it says, and say, how have I hated instruction and my heart despised reproof? I've stopped drinking diet soda for the most part. I've really cut back. It was kind of like my cheat because it's not really soda. But then they just recently linked it to even more cancers. This stuff is so bad for you. And I'm thinking, well, I'll just enjoy it because I want it now. Well, and again, for me, I'm not slamming diet soda. I think somebody drink diet soda than regular soda, I guess. But for me, I'm looking at this and I say, I am making a choice what I want now versus what I want most. I'm too young to walk into the doctor and have him give me the long face and know that I could have prevented it, right? I don't want that. That's not acceptable. So I made this theory up in my mind, an axiom, if you will. It's I don't really know how to describe it. I'll substitute a word. The thirstier we get, the hungrier we get, and the more sexually desperate we get, the more impaired our judgment becomes. When I'm full, I don't need that Reese's peanut butter cup. But when I haven't eaten in 16 hours because I skipped breakfast and forgot to eat lunch or supper the last night, and I'm like, whoa, I got plenty of calories to spare. And I feel like I could be as vivacious as Murphy, you know what I mean? I'll just run it off. A, I won't run it off. B, it's still hardening my arteries because there's not good food no matter how much or little I eat of it. But when I'm hungry, none of that matters. None of it. And then at the last, whether that's the day later when I'm standing on the scale going, where'd that pound come from? Funny how something this big can Anyway, you know what I mean? At the last have I hated instruction and despised reproof and didn't obey the voice of my teachers. I didn't incline my ear to them that instructed me. That's regret. There are two pains in this life, Proverbs 5 teaches us. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Two pains. You got to choose your pain. That's Proverbs 5 in a nutshell. He uses a woman here as an example, and he's teaching about a good sexual ethic. And he's being, again, the Hebrews would have read this and said, NC 17, man, no admittance unless you're with a guardian or an adult. You know what I'm saying? A guardian or a parent. Because this is very blatant, especially that purple paragraph with the bullet points, right? Let. It's very explicit about a fruitful and covenant committed sexual relationship between two people. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a great opportunity for me to shut up. Ladies and gentlemen, you tell me how well it's worked out for the United States of America to abandon the wisdom of Proverbs chapter 5. Because I'm seeing a world that's filled with regret, and we're forced to abandon self-evident truths like abortion is murder, and we're rationalizing around that so that we can have sex without consequences, so that we can, you know what I'm saying? It's all about, and one of these days, anybody who ever thought Britt talks about sex in every other sermon, you're going to realize that it's for a reason. It's because our Western culture is not shaped around money. It's not shaped around power. It's not shaped around religion. It is shaped around sex. It is. And I can prove that to you. And you give me 30 minutes and some concealer because we're both going to blush. But I could prove it to you in 30 minutes with an internet. And I could show you every single iota of evidence that everything has to do with sex. It's Jeffrey Epstein, he wasn't embezzling money. That's not how he got in trouble. Although it might have been one of the things, you know. Bill Clinton didn't have a national champion. You know what I'm saying? It's all about sex. And that's why Proverbs touches on sex all over the place. Why? Because the author's not an idiot. And if it's Solomon, he's lived it.
Kind of was. Bye-bye. Hey.